She thought she was going to get a red buzzer?
13-year-old Courtney Hadwin walked onto the stage of America's Got Talent and, overnight, became one of the most talked-about acts on the planet. When the show ended, Simon Cowell stepped in with a record deal most artists spend decades chasing. But Courtney would later describe what happened next.
And that changed her life. Do you know that story?
Yeah.
I'm not Clive Davis. I'm Howie Mandel, and I can't sign you to a record deal. The only thing I can do for you, young lady, is give you...
As one of the worst experiences of her life, when she finally tried to rebuild what she had lost, a major controversy would shatter everything further and leave the fans and judges who once cheered her on completely heartbroken. How the World Met Courtney Hadwin. Every few years, a talent competition produces a moment that stops viewers in their tracks. Sometimes it is a singer with a voice that defies their age. Sometimes it is a dancer who moves like no one has ever moved before. But in June 2018, America's Got Talent delivered something the world would never forget. A 13-year-old girl from a small town in England walked onto the stage and sang with a voice that left the judges speechless. Courtney Hadwin became a global sensation overnight. But the same fame that made her would eventually become something else entirely. The audition aired on June 12, 2018. Courtney was 13 years old, and she walked onto the stage looking like any other teenager, nervous and unsure. Before performing, she told the judges she was plagued with stage fright. In fact, she could barely raise her voice to speak to them. Mel B had to encourage her just to begin singing. Courtney chose Otis Redding's Hard to Handle, a classic soul track that demands confidence and swagger. And what followed was a transformation that left everyone in the room stunned. As soon as she started singing, the shy teenager disappeared. Her voice was powerful, her movement electric, and her stage presence unlike anything the judges had seen from someone her age. She dropped to her knees during the performance, a moment that made Simon Cowell exclaim, "Bloody hell!" under his breath. Howie Mandel immediately compared her to Janis Joplin. Mel B looked like she could not believe what she was witnessing. When the song finally ended, the audience was on its feet. Howie Mandel did not wait. He walked over to the golden buzzer and pressed it, sending Courtney straight to the live shows. Backstage, he declared that he had never been more excited in his life. He compared her to Darcy Lynn Farmer, the ventriloquist who had won season 12, and suggested that Courtney was this year's winner. It was the third time Mandel had used his golden buzzer on a singer who went on to become a frontrunner. He had previously pressed it for Grace VanderWaal, the ukulele-playing singer who won season 10. The audition was broadcast to more than 11 million live viewers on NBC, but the real impact came online. Within 1 week, the audition video had been viewed more than 130 million times across social media and streaming platforms. Eventually, that number would surpass 250 million views, making it one of the most watched auditions from season 13. Just like that, Courtney Hadwin was no longer a shy teenager from England, she was a global phenomenon. As the season progressed, she continued to deliver. In the quarterfinals, she performed James Brown's Papa's Got a Brand New Bag. All 4 judges gave her standing ovations. She advanced to the semifinals alongside Amanda Mina. In the semifinals, she took on Steppenwolf's Born to be Wild. She performed with a high-pitched scream and her signature dance moves. Howie Mandel told her she was born to be wild, and once again predicted she would be the winner. Simon Cowell called her a bundle of excitement, describing her as raw and messy. He said he had seen her at the beginning of the show shaking like a leaf, and then she came out on stage and turned into something else. That, he said, was why he absolutely loved her. Heidi Klum praised her for bringing gritty rock and roll when most girls her age sang pop. Mel B offered the only critique, noting that she could feel Courtney's nerves during the performance. But the audience disagreed, and she received enough votes to advance to the finals. In the finale, she performed Could Have Been Me with the band The Struts, followed by Janis Joplin's Piece of My Heart. The judges had praised her all season. The audience had voted her through every round. The online views had shattered records, and she was the frontrunner to win the $1 million prize. But when the results were announced, something completely unexpected happened. Courtney Hadwin finished in 6th place. The winner was Shin Lim, a close-up magician who had delivered stunning performances throughout the season. A journalist present at the Dolby Theatre during the finale later reported that the collective gasps from the audience were deafening when Courtney was eliminated. Fans took to Twitter, calling the result ridiculous and expressing shock that she had failed to even make the top 5. The girl who had been predicted to win from the very first audition was sent home without a trophy. But what happened next was even more shocking than the elimination itself. The girl who had been too shy to speak to the judges, who had transformed into a powerhouse on stage, would begin an extremely challenging journey that no one could have prepared her for. The shocking aftermath and collapse. After Courtney Hadwin finished 6th on America's Got Talent, the record deals came quickly. Simon Cowell, the man who had called her a lion on stage, decided to partner with Arista Records to sign her to a multi-contract deal. The announcement was made on December 17, 2018, just months after the finale. Courtney was 14 years old, and she spoke about how super excited and lucky she felt to join the label. Simon Cowell, on his part, said she was an amazing artist and that he would never forget her first audition. He said it was fantastic that they now had the opportunity to work closely with her. Everyone seemed excited about the deal, but then, shortly before Courtney's 16th birthday, everything fell apart. The labels involved, Psycho Music and Arista Records, underwent severe structural changes. Psycho Music was winding down its operations around that period, leaving artists without label support. Courtney, who had signed her deal with the expectation of a major label push, was suddenly without a team. The deal that was supposed to launch her career had folded. In interviews years later, she described how the collapse of the label made everything harder. She said she constantly felt like she had to prove herself a little bit more every single day, and that the collapse left her in a more difficult position than before her America's Got Talent appearance. Instead of bouncing back and reinventing herself after the collapse, Courtney began facing a creative identity crisis that no one had prepared her for. After the finale and her signing, she was shuttled into writing sessions with pop-leaning songwriters and producers. These were not the people who understood her sound. She later explained that she was put into big writing camps with songwriters and producers who did not necessarily know her sound. She said she would go into sessions and basically just be given songs she could not relate to at all. She described the music as pure Ariana Grande pop, which, she said, just was not her at all. The music that had made Courtney famous was not pop. It was soul, blues, and rock and roll from a different era. She had discovered her musical identity by watching black and white YouTube videos of James Brown, Tina Turner, Etta James, and Aretha Franklin. She said the moment she realized this was what she wanted to do was after seeing a black and white video of James Brown performing I Got You, I Feel Good. That was her sound. But the industry wanted something else, something more modern and relatable. But in the process, they nearly erased what made her special. When she finally started creating her own music, there was another challenge. She had to figure out how to make soul and blues sound relatable to the century they were in without sounding too old. It was a delicate balance, and for years, she struggled to find it. She was placed in rooms with writers who did not know her and was forced to navigate an industry that had already discarded her once. The turning point came when she met producer Kevin Bowe. Bowe had credits with Etta James and Joe Cocker. He understood the music that Courtney loved, and she later admitted that this was the moment songwriting truly began to matter. With Bowe, she was finally encouraged to contribute, to actually write alongside him rather than having session writers figure it out for her. It was a different process that required her to open up in ways she had not been asked to before. Courtney later confessed that songwriting had never come naturally to her. Her main priority was just being on stage. But over time, something shifted, and now songwriting is something she cannot live without. She worked tirelessly on her debut album, writing since she was approximately 15 years old. In September 2025, the album, titled Little Miss Jagged, was finally released. It was the result of years of struggle, rejection, and creative rediscovery. Even as she was finding her footing as an artist, something absolutely awful was happening online. The same internet that had made her famous began to turn on her, and the accusations that followed were unlike anything she had ever faced. The online trolling and accusations. While Courtney Hadwin was trying to find her voice as an artist, the internet was busy trying to take it apart. The same crowd who had watched her audition videos and were absolutely wowed were now scrutinizing every detail of her past. They found footage of her on The Voice Kids UK in 2017, where she had finished in the top 6. They compared her confident performances there to the shy teenager who had barely been able to speak to the judges on America's Got Talent, and they reached a conclusion that spread across social media within hours. Soon, online trolls began accusing her of being fake. They said the shy act was a performance designed to maximize shock value when she transformed on stage. The backlash was immediate. After her audition aired, viewers took to Twitter specifically calling out the inconsistency. One user posted that she had been a finalist on The Voice UK, so her act was fake. Others echoed the sentiment. The accusations spread quickly, and for a teenager who had already admitted to struggling with stage fright, the scrutiny became so overwhelming. What the critics did not mention was that America's Got Talent had no rule against contestants with prior competition experience. Courtney was not breaking any rules. In fact, she was not hiding anything. But on the internet, facts did not matter as much as the story people wanted to tell. Courtney's grandfather, Tom Story, came to her defense. He told the Daily Mail that the family had always believed she would do well in the United States. He said they knew the American audience would get her in a way that the UK audience did not. He said they knew she would go down a storm over there. The decision to enter America's Got Talent over Britain's Got Talent was strategic. They believed the United States market would appreciate her rock and roll energy more than the British audience had. While they were right about the reception, they could not have predicted the backlash that would follow. At the time, Courtney was just 14, yet she handled the criticism with a grace that seemed beyond her years. After her elimination, she said that from America's Got Talent, she had learned to not look at all the bad comments and to just concentrate on the positive. She thanked everyone who had voted for her and supported her, adding that she would not have gotten there if it was not for them. She also described being at the live shows as a great experience. This was a mature response from someone who had just been told by millions of strangers that she was a fraud. Yet, the accusations did not go away. If anything, they followed her for years. But the trolling that Courtney faced online was not the only bullying she endured. Even after becoming world famous on America's Got Talent, she was bullied by her own school friends. Her classmates reportedly mocked her voice and called her names. She faced taunting at her school in Hesleden, County Durham, at a time when she was supposed to be celebrating her success. Her parents had feared the spotlight specifically because of the bullying she endured at school. They knew what the attention might bring, and they tried their best to protect her. But when you are a teenager, there is no protection from the people you see every day. The accusations of being fake followed her from the moment her audition aired and resurfaced even after she changed her look. They appeared whenever she did something that did not fit the image people had created for her. And through it all, Courtney kept her head high. She kept writing and performing, and she even released her debut album, Little Miss Jagged, in September 2025, the culmination of years of struggle and growth. But the release of the album did not mark the end of her difficulties. Because behind the music, the performances, and the confident stage presence, Courtney Hadwin was fighting a private battle the world didn't know about: public disappearance and mental health struggles. Between 2019 and 2022, Courtney Hadwin disappeared from the public eye, but not in the usual way artists take a short break to work on new music. She vanished more completely, as if the very industry that once promised to support her had fallen apart around her. She was between 15 and 18 years old during this period. The momentum from the most watched audition in America's Got Talent history had evaporated. The label situation had folded, and the songwriting camps had produced nothing that felt original. Just like that, the girl who had been called a lion, a force of nature, and a future star by the judges was suddenly nowhere to be found. Her followers initially assumed she had quit music entirely, but they did not know that she was fighting to hold on to it. Years later, Courtney described that period as deeply challenging, and she didn't try to sugarcoat it. She confessed that there was a constant pressure to prove she was more than just the girl from that television show. The sudden fame came with a weight she hadn't expected. So instead of simply growing as a singer and finding her sound, she became a teenager still figuring out who she was under the scrutiny of the entire world. And when the label support she had disappeared, she was left to figure it all out on her own. The years between 2019 and 2022 were not empty. They were actually filled with writing. Courtney had been working on her debut album, Little Miss Jagged, since she was approximately 15 years old. She used the process as a diary entry, a way to process everything that was happening to her. Songwriting had started as something she hated, something that was thrown at her by people who did not understand her. But over time, it became the only way she could properly express herself. She was not very good at talking about her feelings, she explained, so songwriting became that outlet for her. The songs she wrote during those years were not about fame or performances or standing ovations. They were about what happened when all of that went away. The challenge of child stardom is something Courtney has spoken about with remarkable honesty. Now 21 years old, she looks back on being thrown into the deep end at 13. She recognizes now that the transition from child competitor to adult artist had been extremely difficult. She spent her teenage years navigating industry pressures rather than having a normal childhood. She didn't have the typical high school experiences or the quiet years of figuring out who she was away from cameras and crowds. Instead, all she had was a television show that made her famous, a record deal that fell apart, and years of trying to prove that she was more than the moment that had defined her. She has been clear about the duality of her experience. Courtney has made it clear that she is grateful for the opportunity that America's Got Talent provided. That show gave her a platform that most artists spend their entire careers trying to build. But gratitude and difficulty can exist at the same time. She is thankful for the doors that opened, while also acknowledging that the pressure to walk through those doors at 13 was overwhelming. She appreciates the millions of people who watched her audition while also struggling with the weight of having to live up to that moment every time she performs. The writing of Little Miss Jagged was not just about creating music. It was telling the world the truth about what really happened to her after the show ended. The album, released in September 2025, is the product of years of struggle, self-doubt, and rediscovery. Every song on that album carries the weight of the years she spent trying to figure out who she was as an artist and as a person. The title itself says it all. Her journey has been jagged, uneven, and not smooth. It is an acknowledgement that the path from child star to adult artist is rarely a straight line. And while she was finding her way back to music and releasing the album that had taken nearly a decade to create, Courtney began facing yet another challenge that would further impact her career and leave her with more questions than she could answer. Frozen at 13 years old. Courtney Hadwin spent years trying to be heard. But the louder she sang, the harder it became to escape the version of herself that the world had already decided she was. The shy teenager with the trembling voice before the music started was what her fans wanted. That was the Courtney they had fallen in love with. And when she tried to grow up or show them who she was becoming, many of them refused to let go. Courtney has described the feeling in interviews over the years. She said a lot of people just wanted her to stay as that 13-year-old girl. Even now, years later, when she posts anything online, people still remember her only as that innocent little girl from America's Got Talent. Courtney has confessed that there were days when that weight became unbearable. That feeling became the foundation for one of the most important songs on her debut album. You Only Love Me When I Lie is all about the concept of people not letting go of the image they have of you in their heads. It is a song about pretending to be someone you are not, because the truth is too hard for the people around you to accept. Courtney has explained that the song came from a place of pure frustration. She messaged her producer, Kevin Bowe, and told him she needed to write about this. The result was a track that she has described as having the rawest version of her. She said it is very rooted in how she started in soul and blues. It is, in her words, the most soulful song on the album. The video for You Only Love Me When I Lie was a deliberate statement. Courtney said she loved every minute working on the set and portraying herself as a woman and not a child. She said a big part of her journey and this song was showing and telling how she was no longer that kid everyone wanted her to be. She pointed out that everyone grows up and changes, but when you achieve fame at such a young age, many people expect you to not develop and change in the normal way that everyone does. The video was her way of saying that she was done pretending. But the pressure to stay frozen did not come only from fans. It came from the industry as well. In interviews, she has talked about being told not to release certain songs. One of those was 16, a track she originally wrote when she was actually 16. She was told it would never make an album, and that it was not good enough. Years later, when she turned 20 as an independent artist, she revisited the song at 20 and rewrote the lyrics from a new perspective. Recording that track took her back to how strange her life had been and how much pressure she was under at such a young age. But the foundation of her struggles began a long time ago before she was on television. At a very young age, Courtney Hadwin began performing on the streets just to pay for her own singing lessons. Her grandfather revealed that she would travel across the country, performing on streets in the Northeast, in York, and in London to raise money. She gave some of the cash to her father for petrol money to get her to her favorite spots. But even then, even as a child working to fund her own education, she faced resistance. The other buskers did not like having her around. Her grandfather explained that the shopkeepers and the punters loved Courtney, but the other buskers kept asking her to move away. She was always the big attraction. She attracted the crowd, and that meant she was taking their prime spots, their best corners, and their regular income. An 11-year-old child, working to pay for her own lessons, was being pushed out by adults who saw her as competition. The bullying did not stop on the streets. When she appeared on The Voice Kids UK, people were also cruel online. They said she was not a singer, but a shouter, and even after the show ended, the taunting continued. In a 2025 interview, Courtney looked back on her journey from a 13-year-old girl to the woman she is now. She confessed that the younger version of herself would be shocked at how much she has changed, and proud of how much courage she has now. She spoke about how she used to care so much about what people thought. While she never showed it, she revealed that every hate comment or sly remark hit her really hard. Sometimes, it would make her sit and wonder if she wanted to put herself in the limelight at all. Now, she honestly could not care less what people think. Of course, she wants people to connect with her music, but she is writing it for herself. And anyone who connects along the way is a bonus. In June 2025, 1 month after the release of Little Miss Jagged, Courtney Hadwin took the stage at Festival Vila in Portugal. It was supposed to be a celebration. After years of struggle, the label collapse, and the creative identity crisis, she had finally released an album that represented who she really was. The performance in Portugal was meant to showcase her new artistic identity, the woman she had become after nearly a decade in the spotlight. However, what happened after that festival would leave her devastated. The problem began when Courtney took the stage in an outfit that represented a dramatic departure from the shy 13-year-old in the school uniform. She wore a cropped white shirt, a red tie, fishnet stockings, and extremely short bikini-like bottoms. It was bold and confident. It represented the look of a young woman who had spent years being told who to be and had finally decided to be herself. The outfit went viral within hours, but it did so for the wrong reasons. In a single day, Courtney received more than 200 mocking messages. Commenters accused her of being a fake act, the same accusation that had followed her since 2018. They suggested she was desperate for attention. They picked apart her appearance, her outfit choices, and her evolution from the shy teenager who had once trembled in front of Simon Cowell. The backlash proved the exact point she had been making for years. People only wanted the version of her that stayed the innocent child they remembered. The moment she showed them who she really was, they turned on her. Courtney later characterized the experience as facing an attack of mocking messages. She had released an album that was, in her words, the rawest version of her. She had written songs about being trapped by other people's expectations, and she had put herself on a stage to perform those songs as the woman she had become. Yet, the response was not applause, but awful messages telling her she was doing it wrong. With her album, Little Miss Jagged, Courtney says she has finally achieved creative control. The album represents her authentic self, not what producers or the fans want. While describing the experience of making it, she said she felt like she grew up with the album. Every single song had been a part of her life. The album was her diary, her therapy, and her way of processing everything that had happened to her since she was 13. It was the most honest work she had ever created. Yet her performance in Portugal showed her the devastating truth. Even after achieving creative freedom, the public still resisted her evolution. The contradiction was painful. She had done everything she was supposed to do. She had survived the label collapse. She had found a producer who understood her. She had written her own songs on her own terms. She had released an album that she was proud of. And still, when she showed the world who she had become, the response was not acceptance. She was 20 when she finished writing an album that took nearly 6 years to complete. And she was 21 when she finally released it. The album, Little Miss Jagged, is the sound of a woman who refused to stay in the box that was built for her. What kind of music would you like to see Courtney Hadwin make? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.